NASCAR Winston Cup Racing, 1989. The book opened on the last chapter of the most power-packed decade in motorsports history, and the final campaign of the 80s went out with a tremendous roar. NASCAR Winston Cup Racing is a high-speed story of the men, their machines, and the unforgiving battlegrounds where their strategies and talents are tested to the limit. The machines. A dazzling display of mechanical artistry, the colorful, finely tuned mounts that were piloted by the men who chased the Winston Cup rainbow seemed to take on a new luster in '89. Immaculately designed, brilliantly adorned, skillfully driven, it was to be a season that re-emphasized America's love affair with the American-made automobile. The men. Dedicated, motivated, driven to win. These are the men of the Winston Cup, warriors who skirmish at speeds approaching 200 miles an hour. Stamina, endurance, incredible concentration, poise, all are necessary ingredients for a successful Winston Cup campaigner. A remarkable degree of driving talent garnished with a bushel full of courage completes the mold of the men of NASCAR. The tracks. The massive superspeedways with their turns banked to the skies. The legendary road courses that snake their way over historic paths through the countryside of upstate New York and beautiful California. The full contact short tracks, still the backbone of the sport. Innovating, captivating, unpredictable. These are the battlegrounds of NASCAR, the arenas where the duels for the Winston Cup took place. NASCAR's colorful Winston Cup season traditionally opens with its biggest race, the Daytona 500. It was here 1 year ago that one of the most violent accidents in Daytona history took place. Richard Petty, turn 4.
That was probably the most spectacular wreck we've ever had. Daytona Beach, a lot of people watching. I didn't do it on the backstretch, had to do it in front of everybody. And, I remember the car getting sideways, and then the next thing I remember is the car backing up to the wall, and I just seen the asphalt coming in front of me, and I said, Richard, you better hold on, this is going to be tough. And I remember it spinning 3 times on its nose, and then hitting the ground and sliding out and stopping. And then about that time, something hit the car. I didn't know what it was till after I watched it on the film, and then the car really got violent. Boy, it spun around the gas tank and everything off of it, and then it finally stopped, and we was okay.
The starting lineup for the great American race, the Super Bowl of Major League Stock Car Racing. The 1989 edition of the 500-miler over the high-banked world center of speed was a spectacular addition to the event's rich history. Popular Darrell Waltrip, the athlete who's won more prize money than any other competitor in motorsports history, grabs the lead from the outside front row starting slot. A broken oil line sends Neil Bonnet to the sidelines after only 2 laps. Pole winner Ken Schrader dogs Waltrip through 4. As they enter the tri-oval, he uses the draft to slip into the lead. The scramble among the leaders turns into all-out warfare. Davey Allison's out of control, sliding into the infield, and rolls over. Miraculously, he returns to finish the race. The field heads for the pits. The crews go to work in a frantic fight against time and the competition. This is where the Daytona 500 will ultimately be decided. Dale Earnhardt appears to be in a position to score, but this race has turned into a gamble on fuel consumption. Every top competitor makes one last stop for gas. Everyone but Alan Kulwicki and Darrell Waltrip. Just when the glory appears to be Kulwicki's, he cuts down a tire. His miracle dream That dream of victory is over, and it's just another race. But after 17 years for car 17, Darrell Waltrip, it's the end of the frustration, the end of the near misses. It's his first ever Daytona 500. His never give up style, his perfect pit strategy pays off, and it's a joyous celebration in victory lane, complete with Waltrip's version of the Icky Shuffle. The '89 Winston Cup campaign was off to a rousing start. It was Waltrip, Schrader, and Earnhardt clustered at the top of the point standings as the tour headed for Rockingham and the Goodwrench 500. A 500-mile test over Rockingham, North Carolina Motor Speedway usually produces some of the most spectacular competition of the season, and the '89 Goodwrench 500 was no exception. Rusty Wallace, rebounding from a disappointing 18th place finish in that season-opening Daytona 500, captured the pole in record-setting fashion. He held off Darrell Waltrip at the start on this wet Sunday afternoon in the Carolina Sandhills. Car 23, Eddie Bierschwale, takes a long spin in turn 2. A broken crankshaft sidelines Hut Strickland as Larry Pearson fights to keep his machine headed in the right direction. Pit lane was to become the center of activity as crews refueled their thirsty machines. Waltrip had mounted a serious challenge from the outset, but well into the race, a broken oil pan dashed his hopes of a second straight win. Dale Earnhardt, running off the tail end of the lead lap, pulls off a serious charge by Ricky Rudd. The two finally lock horns in a frenzied exchange. Rudd spins, collecting car 33, Harry Gant. A final spin out of turn 4 proves to be the last obstacle for Rusty Wallace, who flexes the muscles he so dramatically used in the closing stages of the 1988 campaign. Twice the Missouri campaigner fought his way back from a lap down. At the end, it was his Pontiac holding off Alan Kowicki's Ford for the checkered flag. Earnhardt in his Chevrolet ran to his second straight third-place finish. A happy crew, a jubilant Wallace celebrated in victory lane. Rusty Wallace capturing his 11th career Winston Cup victory. With 27 events to go, Dale Earnhardt slipped to the top of the Winston Cup standings, just 5 points ahead of Jeff Bodine, and the series headed for the Motorcraft 500 in Atlanta, Georgia. Unpredictable Atlanta International Raceway can serve up some breath-snatching Winston Cup finishes, and that tradition was delivered with dramatic flair in the mid-March Motorcraft 500 over the demanding 1.5-mile oval. The unique Atlanta layout features long, sweeping turns, short straightaways, a design that puts a premium on the handling capabilities of a well-tuned race car and the talent as well as determination of the man behind the wheel. The Ford duo of Alan Kowicki and Mark Martin, a pair of rising stars in the game, shared the front row for this one, and Rusty Wallace, fresh from his win at Rockingham, was solidly in the hunt. Mark Martin grabbed the early lead. The 30-year-old star from Batesville, Arkansas, had the Jack Roush Ford dialed into this tricky oval as he led the field back to the start line. The engine expires in the Dave Marcus Chevrolet, and on the ensuing restart, there's Wallace back at the head of the pack. It's a short day for the Junior Johnson team and Terry Labonte, along with Bobby Hillen, who smokes onto pit road. The king, Richard Petty, is looking strong, attempting to win his first race since July 4th, 1984, and add another trophy to that enviable collection in his Level Cross, North Carolina Museum. If you're truly interested in stock car memorabilia, especially the winningest driver in the sport's history, you can drop in on Level Cross, North Carolina for a real memory lane trip. Pay a visit to Richard's Museum. It's personalized, it truly reflects the gentle smile and that solid ability that carried Richard Petty further than any other driver in the sport's history. These trophies, these cars, these photographs tell us about the man who brought the sport of stock car racing to a new height of popularity. Richard Petty's unique museum, the home of a remarkably large slice of Winston Cup history. But there will be no museum additions from this day in Atlanta. Fire erupts in the Petty pit, but the quick-thinking STP Pontiac campaigner moves to a safer spot on pit road while emergency crews swing into action. Remarkably, after it was all over, Richard Petty came out to finish the race. The activity is furious on pit road. Waltrip slips out across the white line, exiting pit road just inches in front of Earnhardt. The Tide crew is charged with excitement, and the stage is set for a showdown with their driver in control. On the restart, Rookie of the Year contender Wisconsin's Dick Trickle sets the pace, but only as far as turn one. Waltrip and Earnhardt muscle their way by. The Dale and Darrell show is center stage, both chasing after that checkered flag. Earnhardt pushing his car to the limit, desperately trying to score his first win of the '89 season. But it's not to be as Waltrip crosses the wire in front with less than a second separating him from the hard-charging Earnhardt in the Richard Childress owned Goodwrench Chevrolet. For the three-time Winston Cup title holder, this was Waltrip's second win in a season only 3 races old. Earnhardt's consistently high finishes has him squarely in the Winston Cup lead as the teams head to Richmond, Virginia. To give a better perspective on the Winston Cup Point Championship, here's how it's figured. The winner of a NASCAR Winston Cup event gets 175 points. It drops 5 points per position back to 6th place. The 7th place finisher receives 146 points, and then the drop is 4 points back through position number 11. Beginning with the 12th position, points go down in increments of 3 through the remainder of the field. 5 points are accrued for leading any single lap of the race, and there's another 5-point bonus for a driver who leads the most laps in a Winston Cup event. Missouri's Rusty Wallace claimed his second '89 victory at Richmond, and the Winston Cup caravan headed for Darlington, the track too tough to tame. Promising Mark Martin bolted from his pole position to set the pace. But this is Darlington, where veteran race goers have learned to expect the unexpected. Nobody knows how to anticipate the whims of this egg-shaped layout that they call the Lady in Black. Alan Kowicki makes a run at Martin, and there's a heated 5-car scramble among Bodine, Waltrip, Schrader, Gann, and Earnhardt as they try to track down the leaders. Davey Allison is having his best run of the year in the Haviland Ford. Winston Cup leader Dale Earnhardt has mechanical problems, while others have problems of a different sort. As the Trans-South 500 winds down, it's clearly turning into Harry Gant's day, as the Skoal Bandit Oldsmobile has performed flawlessly. Gant is in control as he crosses the finish line, comfortably ahead of Davey Allison and third-place finisher Jeff Bodine. The crew celebrates as Gant ends a dry streak dating back to North Wilkesboro, North Carolina in 1985. He pockets over $59,000, led 179 of the 367 laps, averaging 115 miles per hour. Gant glows with pride in the success of his old sponsor and his new team.
Just felt more or less lucky to win the race because it'd been a new team, and you know, they were really hoping to win a race anytime this year. So we got it quick, and it upped their morale the whole rest of the time. So it made me feel better to know that you know, they felt good about it.
The young, persistent Alan Kowicki slipped ahead of Dale Earnhardt and Jeff Bodine in the Winston Cup standings, followed by Sterling Marlin and Rusty Wallace. And the schedule shows Bristol, Tennessee, next in the lineup. Short tracks were the backbone of NASCAR in the 60s and 70s, and one veteran, retired driver Cecil Gordon, candidly recalls the difference between the chauffeurs of today and those hardy veterans of the past.
Back when I did race, it's a lot easier now. These drivers got it made now. It's easier. They got cool suits, and they got gloves, and got good special shoes and all this stuff. It's easy for them now. Power steering, you don't have to have no muscles to drive these things. Just got to have a little fin between the ears and stand on the paddle. That's all you got to do.
It'll be a long time before anybody in this sellout crowd at Bristol's Valleydale 500 forgets the 1989 April spectacle. 32 cars started the battle over the high-banked half-mile bowl, and with 34 lead changes, a whopping 20 caution periods, you've got all the ingredients for one wacky afternoon of Winston Cup action. Scenic Bristol, Tennessee. This area is so peaceful, so quiet up here in the mountains. When they're ready to race, when you have Mark Martin, Jeff Bodine, and Alan Kowicki leading the field, welcome to Thunder Valley. Ken Schrader into the wall. Bierschwale takes out Butch Miller as Pearson and Bodine are trapped. It's Larry Pearson again in the 16 Chattanooga Chew Machine. Greg Sachs, car 88, is right on the edge of control. Gant on a long spin in the front chute, and Pearson just can't get a break. Ernie Irvin hard into the wall, then collects Strickland. Then the Bud Moore car, Brett Bodine. Bobby Hillen into the wall, and suddenly he's on the hot seat. As the crowd looks on, Hillen jumps out of the battered machine okay. And there goes the number 29 Hardy's machine. It's back to the body shop for Dale Jarrett. Morgan Shepherd joins the growing list of battered machinery. Michael Waltrip gets a sour taste of those Bristol high banks. Marlin out of control as Phil Parson just avoids contact with the outside retaining wall. And the luck of the Irish has to belong to Dick Trickle. Gant does one more encore, and Greg Sachs completes the zany afternoon at Bristol. When the smoke cleared, a hint of normalcy restored, it was Rusty Wallace, 0.2 of a second ahead of Darrell Waltrip at the finish. Wallace was up to second in the Winston Cup point standings, and Waltrip back in sixth, less than 95 points off the leaders' total. There was a $1 million prize at the end of this 1989 Winston Cup Rainbow, and the superstars knew it as they worked their way through North Wilkesboro and Martinsville on their way to the Winston 500 in Alabama. The early May event at Talladega marked the long-anticipated debut of the all-new Chevrolet Lumina, a sleek sedan engineered with an aerodynamic soundness the designers at General Motors expected would deliver winning results. Pole sitter Mark Martin and young Davey Allison in the outside front row starting spot lead the snarling group of 41 win-hungry contestants. Down the backstretch, Neil Bonnet slides under Mark Martin to take over the lead, but Davey Allison holds his ground. Four Fords fill out the top four positions as the field heads back to the stripe. Winston Cup racing over the sprawling Talladega Superspeedway can best be described as awesome, or perhaps totally awesome. The action is a dazzling free-for-all scramble over the mammoth high-bank tri-oval monster. This is racing Talladega style. Any speed under 190 plus, you're out of contention. So most of the qualifiers zip around at breathtaking speeds, side by side, lap after lap, dicing in and out of lanes, looking for any hint that might turn into a slight advantage. Lose the draft, and the field will move by like you're parked. Young Dale Jarrett loses control, spins out in turn 4. The pressure's on. Rusty Wallace has an excellent pit stop, leads the parade at the restart, but there's a hungry pack nipping at his heels. Tricky turn 4 turns out to be the trouble spot on this afternoon. There's a multi-car incident to accentuate that distinction. Morgan Shepherd makes a strong move to gain control of his wide-track Pontiac. But young Davey Allison, heir apparent to the Alabama gang throne, simply will not be denied. The Budweiser Ford of Terry Labonte slips in behind Allison's draft to take over second. Down the tri-oval, it's a Ford parade. Allison, Labonte, Martin in a three-car rush to the finish. Car owner Robert Yates celebrates the first win of the year for the Haviland Thunderbird and Davey Allison. A jubilant Davey pockets $98,675 for his afternoon's effort. But even after winning, Allison treats this as one more lesson in Winston Cup racing.
I think if you ever quit learning, then you're going to level off and start on a downward trend. We want to continue our uphill trend right now. We're still learning, and I hope I never stop learning.
The beard, obviously you have a little bit of worry that you're too baby-faced and people call you a little boy, so the beard is to try to give you a macho look that you think you deserve as a race driver. Isn't that true? Well,
a lady at the restaurant that we eat at home a lot walked up and told me that I look 10 years older. So I said, oh, so I look 25 now instead of 15, right?
1/3 of the season is over. It's Dale Earnhardt on top in the Winston Cup standings as the tour heads for the Winston All-Star Clash and the classic Coca-Cola World 600 at Charlotte, North Carolina. Following Talladega, the month of May belongs to Charlotte and its resplendent Charlotte Motor Speedway. First up, the Winston, NASCAR's version of the All-Star Game. In 1989, a segmented three-stage race that pitted winners against winners, where the very least the ultimate victor walks away with is $200,000. That's serious money for a short, high-speed ride.
Gentlemen, start your engines.
Terry Labonte, number 11, Dale Earnhardt, number 3, share the front row when the call goes down. The first segment's off and running. 75 laps around this popular mile-and-a-half oval. In turn 4, there's an unusual family affair. Spinning out of control, it's number 43, Richard Petty, and son Kyle, number 42. Rusty Wallace, with 3 wins this season, easily takes the first segment. But this race calls for a double dose of strategy. Few drivers can top Darrell Waltrip when it comes to making strategic decisions.
We need to win a segment now and start on the pole in the 10-lapper and see which one of us is going to win.
After a 10-minute breather, the crucial second segment, 50 laps, is underway with Wallace on the point. But in the back straightaway, Waltrip unleashes the Tide machine to nose ahead of Wallace. Waltrip's Tide crew, directed by Jeff Hammond, has made the proper adjustment in that first break. Alan Kowicki, number 7, Dale Earnhardt, number 3, and awesome Bill Elliott, number 9, fighting it out. A confident Waltrip captures phase 2, but he knows the day is far from over. Rusty Wallace, after struggling in the second segment, is ready for the final 10-lap shootout.
We accidentally got the right front tire on the right rear that last pit stop, and it threw the stagger off, and I was real loose. He's tough, there's no doubt about it. It's just going to be a dogfight to the very end. I'm going to have to run 10 perfect laps and hopefully get up alongside him on the restart.
What is the strategy for 10 laps, what they're doing now?
There is absolutely none. It's just pedal to the metal and see what happens.
It's the old classic confrontation between Waltrip's Tide Chevrolet, Wallace, and the Kodiak Pontiac. The 3-time national champion is on the point. Wallace, number 27, is reeling him in. It's Waltrip on the high side and Wallace underneath. Through 3 and 4, the two come together, sending Waltrip into a wild slide. We'll be talking about this one for years. You be the judge. Did Wallace spin his opponent out? Did Waltrip cut the young Charger off? Or was it just a racing incident? It's a question race fans will debate for years to come. Wallace went on to win it with Ken Schrader second, and Waltrip ultimately finished in the 7th position. Wallace was $240,000 richer following that controversial finish. The Winston had now set the stage for the Coca-Cola 600, longest of the season. And judging by the reaction of the fans, Rusty Wallace wasn't exactly the favorite, to the delight of one Bodine and one Earnhardt.
Ain't it good to hear them boo somebody besides me and you?
I know. We've been able to talk and talk about fishing this week and be smiling at each other.
Rusty's got all our fans, hasn't he?
He sure has.
The world of Major League stock car racing always waits anxiously for the annual 600-miler at Charlotte. It's a long haul. It's a race that can make or break a championship run. The green flag falls, and Busch Pole winner Alan Kowicki is off and running again, with outside front row starter Mark Martin, number 6, in hot pursuit. All of a sudden, Richard Petty slows, but it's a minor problem. He'll be back. Jerry O'Neill spins the number 53 Chevrolet. Dale Jarrett loses control of the Hardings Pontiac. Tracy Leslie has a problem in the Gilmore Foyt machine, while Kyle Petty spins through the grass at the front chute. Rick Wilson's been running strong in the Kodak Olds, but a cut tire sends him hard into the retaining wall. The yellow flag waves, and Terry Labonte tries a new approach on pit road. as Harry Gant parks his machine for the day. Winston Cup point leader Dale Earnhardt having trouble with his Chevrolet. The 600-mile grind continues to take its toll. Australian Alan Grice, a surprise entrant, spins in 4. Richard Petty is out, upset stomach. And he turns the 43 Pontiac over to Jimmy Means. A strong race by Rusty Wallace fades to despair.
I think it broke a valve. I'm not for sure what it is. I think that's what the problem is.
Kulwicki, after a dominating showing when he led the most laps, is gone, and his dejected crewmen know it instantly.
Everything was going just exactly according to plan. It looked like it was all going to come our way. And then the motor blew.
This is going to be Darrell Waltrip's day. He's on his way to his 5th triumph in the 600. No other driver has ever won more than twice. The Darrell Waltrip driver, Rick Hendrick owner marriage is finally beginning to pay dividend.
Well, the thing that made it neat was, you know, 87, all the things are going around. TIDE was tears in Darrell's eyes, and that I'd made a terrible mistake. And I think the good Lord, in all honesty, gave me the patience and the fortitude to hang in there and see this thing through and see this team a winner. So I feel like I've really been blessed, and I really am gratified by the success we've had.
Darrell Waltrip has snatched the Winston Cup lead away from Dale Earnhardt and moved into a spot to win the $1 million Winston Crown Jewel bonus. Earnhardt rebounded with an impressive win at Dover, Delaware, and the troops then moved to Sears Point International Raceway in California. NASCAR's driving stars made their first visit ever to this twisting, turning, 2.5-mile Sears Point circuit in June. The action was road racing at its best in the Banquet Foods 300. It was a good, clean start with pole sitter Rusty Wallace and determined Mark Martin leading the way at the green flag. The field stays tight and everybody is very cautious in the early going. These drivers are sailing in unknown waters. Mishaps had highlighted pre-race practice sessions, and nobody wanted to get careless when the real thing was underway. That careful approach marked the early portion of the race, but every driver suspected that conditions would change, and they were right in the latter portions of the event. John Krebs spins out of control in the 99 Pontiac. Dick Johnson follows suit in the 38 Ford. It's not long before Neil Bonnet loses control in his number 21 Citgo Ford. The pit road action takes on added dimensions. It's more intense than ever. The crewmen know they can spell the difference in today's race for sure because there are usually very few caution flags in road races. The quarters on pit road are close. The pressure's tremendous right here. Ricky Rudd's closest call of the day happens as he clips Jeff Bodine exiting the pits. At the finish, it's Rudd to the flag just ahead of Wallace, and the Quaker State Buick makes its first trip of the season to victory lane. Rudd shared his thoughts on the quest for the Winston Cup.
See, it can always be better. You know, obviously I wished I had a couple of championships under my belt at this point, but, you know, fate's going to happen as it is, and all I can do is keep plugging hard as I can do and drive as hard as I can, and I feel like today is going to come. As far as when, I don't have an answer for that, but it takes a whole group effort. You know, a driver's not going to carry the team by himself, and a team can't carry a weak driver. It's all got to work together in harmony. And until you get that kind of harmony, you're not going to win championships. And when that whole unit's going to come together, I hope next year. We'll have to wait and see.
The Winston Cup standings, Earnhardt leads Waltrip and Rusty Wallace as the season winds its way to midpoint. It is the dedicated men in the pits who are playing the major role in this year's Winston Cup chase. Call a Winston pit stop what it actually is: controlled chaos. With ballet precision, they swing into action amid the sound, the fury of thundering high-speed missiles. perfect timing here is a must. Every man knows exactly when and how to anticipate his teammates' moves. Danger? You bet. On an overcrowded pit lane filled with snarling race cars eager to return to battle, anything can happen. They face their task with incredible determination. For a few brief moments, they don't hear the roar of the crowd nor the screams of the powerful engines. In 25 seconds or less, it's over. Their battle standards rush back to the front, and they go behind the wall to prepare for the next furious onslaught. These men make the difference between a joyous celebration in Victory Lane or a quiet ride back home. The pressure of a 29-race, 10-month schedule can take its toll, but drivers like Michael Waltrip, Kyle Petty don't seem to have much problem dealing with the stress.
Go. You got something on your lip there. I got him. I got him straight now. A what?
I haven't talked about the season for real, both of them.
Okay, about the season for real. Oh, come here. You got to talk about it. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, on this stage for the very first time, the incredible Michael Waltrip, driver of the Post Serials Country Time All-Pro Auto Parts Pontiac Special. Right here, he's going to tell us about his season.
Well, I'm real encouraged with our season. We've got a good team. We've built a lot of new race cars and developed some new stuff in our engine department. All that takes a little bit of time to develop, as you well know, but I think we've come a long way, such as I think your team has. And I feel like that for the 1990 season, that Neil and Bob here are going to be two of the toughest guys out there.
Neil and Bob, that's really not our names. That's just what we do. But anyhow, our season's been a pretty good season so far. We've had a bunch of wrecks. I've tore up 8 or 10 race cars, and we've run better this last part of the season, I will say. And what do you think about your chances in this race down here?
I tell you what, it's encouraging, our chances, I think.
Did you make this race down here?
We're not sure yet. That's why if we make the race, we're going to be encouraged about our chances.
Terry Labonte in the Budweiser Ford and Bill Elliott in the Coors machine each notched a pair of wins, and Davey Allison collected his second trophy of the year by the time the schedule flipped to the mid-August road race at Watkins Glen, New York. They call it the Glen, but it's really a quaint little village in the Finger Lakes region of upstate New York. The Winston Cup travelers have crisscrossed the nation in a trek from California's wine country to vineyards in the Northeast. The settings are totally different, but then again, remarkably similar. The neighbors around Watkins Glen, however, know a great deal about dueling cars with numbers on their sides. The Glen has been the site of many a famous race for years. Morgan Shepherd of the number 75 Raymont Pontiac is the fastest qualifier. He leads the 40-car field across the start line. The heat's on. The battles are in every unpredictable turn. This is a challenging road course, not one of those left-turn-only southern ovals where most of these drivers hone their racing skills, slipping off the track, an accepted maneuver. Rusty Wallace holds off a persistent Mark Martin to the checkered flag in a tussle that saw 18 starters finish in the lead lap. Wallace had little trouble taming the Glen, but he had a tough time spraying the champagne in Victory Lane. The high-spirited Missouri athlete was closing in on Winston Cup point leader Dale Earnhardt. The Tour ready to move on to Michigan International Speedway and the champion Sparkplug 400. Michigan International's about an hour's drive to the west of Detroit. It's a 2-mile oval, and every driver loves it. Its sweeping turns, its wide straightaways play to a perfect blend of men and horsepower. 3-time national titleist Dale Earnhardt, the points leader going into this 400-miler, talks about the stretch run for the championship.
Well, it's the consistency of the year that wears down the people, you know, and if you can be consistent all year long, you're going to be in those top 3 or 4 that's running for it. This year we got 5 guys here that could win the championship from this point, and it looks like it's going to run on down to the last several races and see who's the winner. So, you know, it's going to be exciting to see what happens along about August, October, and see where everybody's at. Hopefully we'll still be out front gaining just a few more points each race.
Rusty Wallace might as well have been singing that tune "When You're Hot, You're Hot" on this afternoon, because as scorching as the month of August can be, he was even hotter in the number 27 Pontiac. He immediately takes command from outside the front row. The tight packs, the nose-to-tail drafting, it's commonplace at MIS, and once again it becomes the norm. But these guys, whether they know it or not, are now fighting for second place. Rick Jeffrey spins out in the number 18 Pontiac. Sterling Marlin slides out of control in his number 94 Sunoco Olds. Pit road is packed solid, and the crewmen swing into action. After the restart, Terry Labonte limps home powerless in his number 11 Budweiser Ford. Engine failure. Bill Elliott's not far behind. Hood goes up on the number 9 Coors Thunderbird. And there goes the number 29 Hardy's machine. Mike Waltrip gives Rick Wilson a push back to the pits. Wilson's engine is dead. The Wallace crew, directed by Barry Dotson, is having a flawless afternoon. And the Kodiak mount is comfortably out front when the checkered flag waves. Wallace is on a tear. It's his 5th win of the campaign, the 2nd in 2 weeks. That might just be the race that decides the national title. Wallace is closing in on Dale Earnhardt's point lead, and Mark Martin is coming up, not far behind, as the campaign zeroes in on Bristol, Tennessee, and the Busch 500, the only night race in the Winston Cup season. Few events capture the attention of Winston Cup loyalists like the late August Busch 500 lapper at Bristol International Raceway. The packed house, sold out 2 weeks in advance, loves this version of Saturday Night Live, and the tension mounts when the lights go on. Alan Kowicki's number 7 Ford, Jeff Bodine in the number 5 Chevrolet pace the start. Sterling Marlin slides out of control in his number 94 Sunoco Olds. Mike Waltrip's Country Time Pontiac takes a beating, and he's the first car out. It's typical Bristol mayhem. Engines blowing, cars spinning. This is old-fashioned short-track racing that registers high on the Richter scale. Dale Earnhardt and Jeff Bodine do their own cramming and bamming. Morgan Shepherd splatters oil all over the back chute. Kyle Petty's number 42 in serious trouble. Winston Cup leader Dale Earnhardt, after sharing the lead several times, punches the wall. He's down, but not out, and will have to settle for a finish near the middle of the pack. It's to be Darrell Waltrip night. Bristol had welcomed an old suitor back to victory lane. The Tide Chevrolet driver had won 7 out of 8 races back in the early 80s here, and now was on his way back to the top. The knot drew tighter in the Winston Cup standings as the campaign prepared to tackle tricky Darlington in the legendary Labor Day weekend Heinz Southern 500, the oldest superspeedway race in the game. This is one race that every driver wants to win. It's the history-rich Southern 500 at legendary Darlington. This late summer 500-mile classic is the oldest superspeedway race on the circuit by 10 years. And its record book is adorned with such famous names as Fireball Roberts and Curtis Turner, Joe Weather, Buck Baker, Ned Jarrett, and more. The men who forged the foundation for the sport. Busch pole winner Alan Kowicki bolts to an early lead, but this race would turn out to be a very special story. Kowicki hits the burners as he leads the field back to the stripe. The engine explodes in Derek Cope's number 10 Pontiac. Jimmy Spencer renews the old tradition of Darlington, a stripe in the number 88 Crisco Oldsmobile. Mean old Darlington's taking its measure. Good off-track friends Dale Earnhardt and Rusty Wallace try to turn this 500-miler into a two-man tag team affair. They're the top drivers in the Winston Cup standings coming to Darlington. Darrell Waltrip's Tide Chevrolet is suddenly smoking. All hopes of claiming the Winston $1 million bonus evaporates into the storied pages of Darlington history, 1989. Larry Pearson, a number 16, spins. Kulwicki retires with engine failure. Earnhardt and Wallace continue their assault, but this will be Earnhardt's day, and the script writers in Hollywood couldn't have developed a more dramatic story. Less than 24 hours earlier, Ralph Earnhardt, Dale's late father, and the 1956 NASCAR National Short Track Champion had been inducted into the National Motorsports Press Association Hall of Fame. Memories of those old days and Ralph Earnhardt were shared on the eve of the Southern 500.
Well, Ralph was the guy that you absolutely did not want to be leading the race on white flag lap because he was the type of guy that he would outsmart you, he would outrace you. And if it come right down to it, he had a right front tire that broke loose a lot of times on the last lap. You go down and you say, Ralph, why'd you bump into me on the last lap? And he'd say, son, I don't know. I'd cut in under you and the front tire would just start skating a little bit and I couldn't keep it out the left rear quarter. He wouldn't wreck you, but he would make his presence known and he would win the race.
We had a little racetrack up right above us there called Rowland Speedway or something. And he come up there one night and had his leg broke, had it in a cast. Went out and won the dadgum race. I mean, you know, and that, like I say, he was sort of one of my heroes, and that just made it that much better.
Well, I didn't get to race against him much, but I did a little bit, and he always intimidated me, you know, but I think that's because I admired him so much and watched him race from the time I was growing up, and he learned me so much just watching him and working with him in the shop. And when I started driving, it was pretty much easy for me to do, and I thought I was pretty good, and I got to race against him a couple of times, and it was pretty tough. I think he'd be proud of us and what's going on. It'd just be great to have him here.
It was fitting, it was appropriate. Earnhardt charges to victory, a magnificent climax to a memorable weekend. Dale's 5th win at Darlington, but none more meaningful. The Winston Cup point scramble is tight, and following a Wallace victory at Richmond, the Tour moves on to Dover, Delaware. The 500-mile battles over the Monster Mile at Delaware's Dover Downs have turned into fan-pleasing extravaganzas, and the mid-September Peak Performance 500 certainly kept that tradition alive. The house was packed, the fans waiting for the fireworks. Davey Allison's Haviland Ford and Alan Kulwicki share the front row. The scramble's underway. Allison sets the pace on lap 1. Ernie Irvin in the number 2 Pontiac is sidelined early ignition problems. The activity on pit road, once again, fast and furious. But this afternoon, it's Dale Earnhardt and the Richard Childress Chevrolet who begins to take center stage. The 3-time champion holds off all challengers. The hood goes up on Darrell Waltrip's Tide machine. In 10 years of trying, Earnhardt has never even finished in the lead lap at a Dover race. But in this season, he's clearly the conqueror of the monster. 2 victories and the leader in 833 of a possible 1,000 laps. That's getting the job done with dominating style. And the fight for the Winston Cup crown was turning into a 3-man war with Earnhardt well up in front, Rusty Wallace and Mark Martin in 2nd and 3rd. Martinsville was next. Bill Elliott is a very popular man on the Winston Cup Trail, and Martinsville is no exception. But there was an interruption to the normal race routine. Contemptuous Hurricane Hugo delivered a late September sucker punch right to the heart of Major League stock car racing. After South Carolina's historical port city of Charleston was turned into a disaster area, this raging weather warlord set its sights on Charlotte. It scored a direct hit. Charlotte Motor Speedway seemed to be the bullseye, and with less than 3 weeks to its annual October race. Dale Earnhardt was so busy mending fences on his farm, he missed the qualifying session at Martinsville. Jimmy Hensley, a Grand National regular, qualified the car in Earnhardt's absence and ended up putting it on the pole with the quickest time. Earnhardt led the first 17 laps of the Goodies 500 Classic at one of the prettiest half-mile tracks in the nation. Jeff Bodine was running strong, but an unscheduled pit stop proved to be his undoing. Waltrip makes a bid on the outside of Earnhardt to take over the lead on lap 18. Tire woes strike 1988 champion Bill Elliott. The Goodies 500 turns into a tug of war between Earnhardt, Wallace, and Darrell Waltrip. With Dale and Rusty side by side, Darrell squeezes in to make it 3 abreast on this tight half mile. Waltrip's patience pays off. His 6th win of the season, his 11th career win at Martinsville. He's not out of the title run yet. Five races remain on the schedule. Earnhardt is feeling the heat from Wallace and Martin, possibly Waltrip too after the Martinsville afternoon of surprises. The battle for the Winston Cup title clearly in focus, and the All-Pro Auto Parts 500 at Charlotte Motor Speedway could just prove to be the deciding contest. But first there was an unusual issue to settle. And oh, did it tug on the heartstrings. The legendary Silver Fox, David Pearson, back in the saddle again. Neil Bonnet, the Woods brothers' regular driver, was temporarily sidelined by injury. The October race was on the horizon. Pearson was asked to drive.
I think he's like probably I am. He sits around and sees some of these boys run. He says, ain't no way they can beat me, you know what I mean? So he's out there to try it again, but he'll have a good time. He'll really enjoy it.
He agreed to test the car and his physical condition in an open practice.
I can feel it in my back, you know, and so if it gets worse, and naturally I don't want to run the car. I don't want to make a fool out of myself and get out there and say run 100 miles and have to get out of the car. I want to be able to run it all if I do it, so I'm just going to have to run a while and later on just see how it feels.
His speeds were highly competitive, but the next day, David Pearson officially announced his retirement. Back problems from other years were aggravated, and he wasn't going to go out and run second best. Once a champion, always a champion. Ford standard bearer Bill Elliott and the Chevrolet, the Folgers car of Ken Schrader, led the start from their front row qualifying positions. Both drivers had it in their mind to lead, and neither was willing to back off. They're side by side down the back chute, heading into 3. There is still no surrender as they pound through the trioval. Both cars dip down into turn 1 with the rest of the field in pursuit. All but one car, the black number 3 of Dale Earnhardt, is in trouble and headed for the pits. The hood is up and the Winston Cup point leader has broken a camshaft. He's done for the day and will be put in the position of having to catch up instead of hold off Rusty Wallace and Mark Martin. Rusty knows this is his chance to put the pressure truly on. It's Jerry O'Neill into the wall in the front chute. A fairly trouble-free day for the front runners. Only 4 caution periods, a total of 21 laps. As the Charlotte battle winds down, it's Schrader in control and on the way to his first win of the year. It's a victory built around a team starting to come together.
Well, you know, Jake Elder came over and became chassis specialist for all 3 of the Hendricks cars the middle of the year. In fact, it's Charlotte weekend, and it really helped us. We got running a little better. The car's driving awful good, and you know, we got knocking on our door there. We couldn't get 1-1, and finally get Charlotte, and it helped us for sure.
Listen, another thing I want to, what did it mean to you personally to win at a place like Charlotte, which is an extremely tough track to win on?
It meant my neighbors trashed my house.
The Winston Cup clock is ticking down. Rusty Wallace is the new points leader as the circuit moves to North Wilkesboro, North Carolina for the Holly Farms 400. The rescheduled Holly Farms 400 at North Wilkesboro in the Blue Ridge Mountains is the last short track stop of the year, and it can, as it has so many times past, play a pivotal role in the title run. This contest, no exception. Dale Earnhardt has to rebound from his Charlotte miseries. He knows it. A strong finish in the Holly Farms race is the only way he can keep his title hopes on the front burner. All eyes are on his number 3 Good Wrench machine. The Winston Cup is burning in his eyes, and he knows what he has to do. Go for it. And he did with gusto. But as the season winds down and every point in the title chase becomes so important, the drivers become more intense, their driving style more aggressive. The track at North Wilkesboro is not a forgiving lady. Overstep the boundaries, you're in trouble. When the dust finally settled and the pieces were all picked up, Earnhardt led the field around for the restart, but once more the yellow was called as Bobby Hillin spin. Earnhardt is on a winning mission. After 398 laps, he's been the leader for 342. But his dream race turns into a nightmare with less than a mile to go. Earnhardt leads a fast-closing Ricky Rudd as the pair slip and slide out of 4, swapping paint as they head for the white flag. There's one more meeting of metal in turn 2, and both cars are victims. Ironically, Rudd never led a lap in the race, and Earnhardt would wind up 10th, a showing that would prove costly. Jeff Bodine, the thankful winner, led only 1 lap. That most important lap, the final one. Bodine picks up the chips in victory lane and talks about the competitive nature of the game.
You know, just to be here, I've probably heard this before, is great. It's really an accomplishment, and you need to be happy with that because you can't win all these darn races. You know, I know that. We go out here week in and week out trying to win, but, you know, I know we can, and we did win North Wilkesboro. Sure, there was some controversy involved, but, boy, I lost a few that way. Mm-hmm. I can name probably 5 or 6, actually. So that felt good. It really did. You know, I hadn't lost any confidence in myself, but it just seems like a lot of pressure came off my shoulders that day at Wilkesboro when I drove into victory lane, and there's no better feeling than the thrill of victory.
Following the controversial North Wilkesboro finish, Ricky Rudd only looks ahead to the next race.
You know, to me, it's one race at a time. Whatever happened the last race, I try to forget about it. We had an incident, I guess, that happened in North Wilkesboro that I think a lot of people maybe wanted to make more out of it than what it really was, but all it really amounted to was I had a good car at the end of the race. Earnhardt's car was fading. I wanted to win the race, and so did he. And we both, I went for a spot that there was at the time was a good hole for it, and he shut the door, which situation was reversed. I probably wouldn't want to give up the win either.
Rusty Wallace is solidly on top in the Winston Cup standings as the teams head for the AC Delco 500 at Rockingham with just 3 races to go. Anytime the Winston Cup regulars pull into Rockingham, North Carolina's Motor Speedway for the late October AC Delco 500, they know it's put up or shut up time. The days are growing short among the few who have hopes of snaring the Winston Cup title. And the other top contenders know that a late season win at the Rock can cement their sponsorship or pave their way to a new one. In short, this is a very long, grueling race that can pave the way to a comfortable upcoming season. And the pressure of the championship run is at a fever pitch. Alan Kowicki's on the pole, Darrell Waltrip alongside. Kowicki assumes early command. Wallace, after qualifying a disappointing 21st, begins to move up through the field. Waltrip replaces Kowicki in the #1 spot, and win-hungry Dale Earnhardt is tight in the chase. The action that Rockingham is famous for soon comes into play. 53, Jerry O'Neill spins. Back under green, it's Waltrip and the man in black, Earnhardt, side by side for the lead. Both drivers still very much in the point chase, neither one wanting to back off. But turn 2 claims another victim. It's rookie Hut Strickland. Earnhardt leads Waltrip on the restart, but Wallace is closing in. He's moving up into the top 10. Then things really get out of control. Slipping and sliding, will it ever stop? Suddenly, the top 2 contenders for the national championship are out of control. Earnhardt sliding, Wallace trying to get by. It's been a year of controversy for Rusty Wallace, and this could make it a long season.
I don't know. I've been controversial all the time, and man, I love my fans. I always have, and sometimes they're pretty hard on me, but that's okay.
Controversy is the one thing you try to avoid it, but it hit you nonetheless. How do you rate yourself handling it?
I think I'm pretty good at handling it. I just don't like it when people try to change it around, change the reality of it around. I don't like being built up the bad guy when all I'm doing is just racing hard.
Long overdue, Mark Martin, number 6, escapes unscathed and manages to pilot his Jack Roush-owned machine to his maiden Winston Cup triumph. It couldn't have come at a better time. He's been knocking on stardom's door all season.
I feel really good about what we've accomplished. I'm real proud of the whole team, Steve Meal, Jack Roush, Robin Pemberton, and all the guys that have put their hearts and souls into this. And it's their accomplishment, or a team accomplishment, you know. I'm real proud of them.
Until that victory at Rockingham, can you sort of tell us how frustrating it was to come so close so many times and have the press write about Mark's going to win someday, but he just fell short again?
Sometimes it was real frustrating, and sometimes it wasn't. Sometimes it was disappointing. You know, like racing, my life and my moods go up and down, you know. There was a time when it was extremely frustrating. There was a time it was really depressing. There was a time that right after Charlotte that I just didn't know what we had to do, you know, and I didn't know if it was ever going to happen, you know. But those frustrations are behind us now, and, you know, we dealt with them pretty good. We had some pretty big disappointments, and all in all, it's been a great year, and we're going to be better prepared to make a run at the championship in '90.
The complexion of the Winston Cup title chase took on a new and very interesting look as the campaign headed west to Phoenix, Arizona. If anybody was going to unseat Wallace in the standings, it'd have to come soon. And only Earnhardt and Martin now had a shot at Rusty Wallace. Phoenix represents an unusual locale for Winston Cup racing, but it was an instant success when the circuit made its first appearance in 1988. And it was an even bigger hit when the Winston Cup stock cars returned to the waning stages of the '89 season here in Arizona. The competitors enjoy the change of scenery. The teams like the challenge the unique one-mile layout on the fringe of the desert represents. Ken Schrader secures his 4th Busch pole of the season. He's off and running at the start with Terry Labonte, number 11, Alan Kowicki, number 7, in hot pursuit. Schrader holds a narrow lead as the field files by. This one-mile track at Phoenix, with its slight banking, keeps the racing close, the action tight. The 1988 winner of Phoenix, Alan Kowicki, is forced into the pits. It's an unscheduled stop. Sterling Marlin's Oldsmobile is engulfed in flames as he leaves the pits, but he's okay. Wallace has worked his way to the front of the field. A win here would all but wrap up the title. It's not to be as he loops the number 27 Pontiac in turn 2. Frantic work by Barry Dotson and his crew get Wallace back in the chase, but the $1 million championship is back up for grabs. As the race draws to a close, it's Bill Elliott, a steady driving performance for the Georgia lad. He wins the Auto Works 500. Elliott captures his third win of the '89 season in front of a record crowd estimated at over 65,000 people. But the Winston Cup title is still in the balance. It's up to Wallace, Earnhardt, and Martin to claim it in the season finale, the Atlanta Journal 500. The assignments are simple when the teams show up for the season-ending Atlanta Journal 500. Wallace has to finish 18th or better, and the $1 million Winston Cup is his. Earnhardt and Martin have to dominate in winning championship form and hope that Wallace falls prey to misfortune. Atlanta is packed. This is the one they've all been waiting for. An entire season comes down for a decision, not for one driver, not for two, but a trio. Earnhardt, poised like a cobra, ready to strike from his third starting position. Right alongside Rusty Wallace, right behind the front row of Ken Schrader and Alan Kowicki. In turn 2, Dale drops low beneath Kowicki and moves on by as Wallace fades. Schrader and Earnhardt charge side by side through turns 3 and 4. On the front straight, it's still a door handle battle, with Schrader just nudging by Earnhardt at the stripe. Car 89, Rodney Combs, spins. Earnhardt leads on the restart. Forget the disappointment at Charlotte, the setbacks at North Wilkesboro and Rockingham. Win this race, see what happens. That's the good wrench strategy. Rusty Wallace makes an unscheduled stop and goes a lap down. Greg Sachs spins the Dinner Bell Pontiac, and that collects Richard Petty and Jimmy Spencer. Earnhardt and Schrader continue their war as Mark Martin keeps the leaders in sight. Wallace slows to turn 3. He's headed for the pits for another unplanned stop. He's now 2 laps down. The Coors machine of 1988 champion Bill Elliott is on the sidelines. Out of 4, Dale Earnhardt moves by Wallace yet again, putting Rusty now down 3 laps. The championship hopes of Mark Martin end in this blazing fire. His title hopes are over, at least for 1989. The race for the Winston Cup is on the track. The crews can only watch and wait. They've done their job. It's up to the men behind the wheel. The tension begins to show. The white flag, final circuit for 1989. The last lap of the decade of the 80s. And it's Dale Earnhardt who so clearly dominates this event, leading 294 of the 328 laps. Earnhardt flies under the checkered flag as the Childress crews celebrate. But an emotion-filled Kodiak crew headed by Barry Dotson appeared on the track, waiting for this moment. After all the problems they've sustained in this Atlanta Journal 500, the 1989 Winston Cup champion is crowned. It's Rusty Wallace. Earnhardt celebrates in victory lane. Dale did what he had to do. He won the Atlanta Journal 500, but he fell 12 points short in the final season standings of the $1 million Winston bonus. It was a hard-fought campaign, and Earnhardt looks back over the season.
Well, it was a up and down season, really. You know, we had some pretty good races, and we were real competitive all year like usual, but got down to the end of the year and had a couple bad races there, and you know, it hurt us a little bit, but still, all in all, we had a lot of fun racing. You know, racing's what we do and what we enjoy, so what we get is what we, you know, do, but you know, I love to win, and it's something we didn't do enough in '89. We're going to work toward 1990 and try to do more of it.
Earnhardt has won the battle, but Wallace has scrambled to a 15th place finish, and he's won the war. A jubilant Rusty Wallace can look ahead to 1990 and defending his championship.
Yeah, I can look ahead to 1990. 1990 is going to be a wonderful year. A new sponsorship, new looking car, a lot of new different things. Even got a new airplane, so I'm excited about 1990 a lot.
The year put a lot of pressure on you, put a lot of pressure on your best friend Dale Earnhardt. How do you think you came out of it?
I think he held up pretty good. He did all right. He got a little weak sometimes on me, but other than that, he held on okay.
What would you say he'd say about you?
I don't know. I think he finally learned it, and he can't win races by mouth, and that's what we both agreed on, and we both went to drive, and we both had good times this year.
Rusty Wallace from the show-me state of Missouri, the kid with a dream, shares his victorious moment with his crew, his kids, and his wife, Patty. Mark Martin was voted the National Motorsports Press Association Driver of the Year. Dick Trickle won the Rookie of the Year title, while Darrell Waltrip was voted for the first time ever Most Popular Driver. The book closes on the last chapter of the 1989 NASCAR Winston Cup campaign. It was over. The season, the decade. Time to kick back and cherish the memories of those great battles in this hard-fought campaign. No, not really. There's barely enough time to pack the uniforms away. For the Winston Cup superstars and the young lions waiting in the wings, it's time to get back to business. Testing sessions and practice runs for the new season begin less than 2 weeks after the final Atlanta go. Forget about downtime and off-season. It's time to prepare for the 90s and another decade of great Winston Cup racing.